once upon a time there was a little dog named Alpine. And his mother asked him to watch his brothers and sisters while she went into town to do some shopping. Alpine was not a good little dog. So as soon as his mother left, he told his oldest sister to watch their brothers and sisters, and he scurried into the forest because he thought it would be a lot more interesting to run and play in the forest than to do what his mother had told him to do. Alpine's mother told him never to go into the forest. It was dangerous and full of things that would eat him up. But he didn't listen, and he ran into the forest just as quick as he could, kicked up his hind paws, and bounced out of sight. And the last thing his sister and brothers heard was him laughing as he cavorted beneath the trees. As soon as he got into the forest, Alpine decided his mother had been very wrong about it. It wasn't dark and scary at all. And instead of there being a whole bunch of things that wanted to eat Alpine up, there was a whole bunch of things he wanted to eat up instead. He ate an earthworm and a slug and a handful of berries and part of an old deer mouse that something else had decided wasn't good enough to eat. By and by he came across an acorn, and he snapped that up too. But once he had it in his mouth, Alpine decided that an acorn wasn't very pleasant to eat at all. It didn't taste good, and it was too hard to bite on, so he spit it out. All of a sudden the acorn spoke up. "Thank you, little dog," it said. "Thank you for not eating me." Now all of a sudden, Alpine just felt somewhat embarrassed by this, because of course he had intended to eat the acorn. And now it was rubbing its little acorn hands together and going, "Oh, I'm just so grateful. I've just been so scared that something would eat me up." Alpine felt bad. His mother had taught him a few manners, so he said, "Thank you, I'm sure," and the acorn looked earnestly into his eyes and said, "Oh, little dog, one of these days I'm going to repay this favor that you did to me." And Alpine felt even more embarrassed. And he rubbed his paws together and he said, "Well, that's very kind, I'm sure, and I do hope we meet again." And the acorn scampered out of sight, and Alpine continued on his way through the forest, playing and laughing and sniffing here and there, and he found so many things to sniff and so many delicious things to eat and even stinky things to roll in that he was just having the time of his life. By and by, he began to get full, and he realized that it was getting dark, and all of a sudden all the things that his mother had said about the forest being dark and scary, full of things that might want to eat him, suddenly seemed a lot more likely to see. He decided that it was high time that he got himself home and saw what his brothers and sisters were up to. So he started scampering back in the direction that he had come just as quick as he could. All the while it got darker and darker, and the trees were waving above him, and he began to think that he wasn't really sure at all which way home was. And even if he was sure which way it was an awfully long way to go. And it got darker and colder, and there were strange noises in the woods, shrieks and howls and sighs. Alpine began to get very frightened. By and by, he decided he just couldn't go on anymore. And he laid himself down on the ground, and he put his paws over his ears and squeezed his eyes just as tight shut as he could get them. And there he lay, quaking like a bowl of jello. All of a sudden, something prodded him in the back. And it was cold, and it was wet, and it was about the size of the bowl his mom fed them his dinner in. And it poked him here and it poked him there. It prodded him up his back and down his front. And all the while it was going sniff, sniff, sniff. Alpine couldn't take it anymore. Still with his eyes squeezed shut, he said, "Stop sniffing me!" And the big thing gave him one more prod and then pulled back. And it said, "All right, but only because I've decided to eat you up." Alpine gave a little cry of terror. "No," he said, "don't eat me up." He felt this gust of hot air as the thing opened its jaws, and a big inhale as it prepared to gulp him down. "Oh, help!" he cried out. And just as he was certain that he was going to be gobbled up, the monster that was leaning over him gave a snort and a cough, and all of a sudden the hot air was gone. Alpine opened one eye just a crack, and he saw the monster stumbling away from him, wheezing and whistling and wiping at its face with a paw the size of a dinner plate. He had no idea what had happened. He didn't care either. He hunkered himself down in a tiny little ball and hoped that the creature would never ever come back. A little while later something touched him and he jumped and he said, "Oh, help!" But a tiny little hand patted him on the nose and a familiar voice said, "Little doggy." And Alpine opened his eyes, and there in front of him was the acorn. And the acorn said, "I told you, little dog, one of these days I was going to return the favor. If you open your eyes and you get on your paws and you run just as fast as you can, you'll be home by morning." "Thank you," Alpine said. And he got on his paws and he opened his eyes and he ran just as fast as he could. And when he got home, his mom smacked him with her paw and she gave him a bowl of warm porridge and put him to bed and told him that he was never ever to go into the forest again. And Alpine said, "Don't worry about that. I'm not ever going into the forest again. Never, ever, 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 ever. And I'm never going to eat anything that's not in my bowl. Ever again." And that was that. The end.